Troll 3. There's two of them! Released around the same time and has nothing to do with the first two Troll films. The first one is more commonly known, at least in North America, as Quest for the Mighty Sword. It became famous on the internet because in Germany it was released as Troll 3, with a poster that's clearly Turok and his magic ring from the first movie despite not being in this, because it's a ripoff of the alternate poster for Troll 1. And ironically, it came out a little bit earlier than Troll 2. The original Italian title for the movie is Ator the Hobgoblin, which means it's now colliding with a completely different franchise. In 1982, Ator the Eagle Fighter was released the exact same year as Conan the Barbarian. And in 1984, with the release of Conan the Destroyer, they made Ator 2 the Blade Master. But in 1991, they re-released Ator 2 as Cave Dwellers, which was on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Then instead of ripping off Red Sonja, they had an original movie, Ator 3 The Iron Warrior, named after their favorite Chaos Space Marines. But because it didn't involve the original director, the movie's been denounced. So the original director of the first two Ators made his own Ator 3, so this movie is technically Troll 3 number 1 and Ator 3 number 2. And given the subtitle, and sometimes it's released as just the Hobgoblin, you can say that this movie is a sequel to Hobgoblins, which was also on Mystery Science Theater 3000, before the actual Hobgoblins 2, and start the goddamn movie before it gets another title. I should also mention the director is Joe D'Amato. If you've seen bad Italian movies from the 70s till the 90s, he's probably involved, doing tons of fake sequels and even porn, including what the hell? So the movie begins with some lady running with the credits in the middle of nowhere. While at the castle, King Ator and his prince, Ator Jr., are finally clearing out the dungeons with tons of executions.
This man has been found guilty of rape.
What's that, the Grey Porn? This movie is basically a remake of Ator 1, while also being the only one in the franchise to not star Miles O'Keefe as Ator. Outside of Ator, he's most famous for playing Tarzan in the 1981 film of Bo Derek. In Quest, he's played by Eric Allen Kramer, who looks like he could be O'Keefe's dad. Eric is the son of Roger Kramer, who's in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Eric also went to the University of Alberta, despite both him and his dad being born in Michigan. A few years later, Eric Allen went on to play Little John in Robin Hood Man in Tights. He's been in about one episode of every show ever, but most notably he was Bob in Good Luck Charlie, as well as being the first live-action Thor in The Incredible Hulk Returns. He also might have turned into Stone Cold Steve Austin. So Ator Sr. has had a dream about his death, and this guy in his silly hat alerts that some of the prisoners ask for trial by combat. So Ator gets out the mighty Magi sword.
He will spare their lives if they can overcome the divine power of the sword of the sacred Graal.
Do you mean the sword of the sacred Grail? Or the sacred Crawl? More people in silly helmets arrive, and Ator might be a little bit out of shape, but he still got this. Ator Sr. tells Ator Jr. their sword must always be with Ator. Then this guy, Thorn, in his slightly less ridiculous beak helmet challenges. The running lady finally arrives and says not to do it, and he's like, no. Tossing his spear, and I guess Ator tries to use the sword to block it, but he still gets impaled, and I guess the pain from the stab makes him snap the sword. Then Thorn turns into a goblin costume from Troll 2, which I guess makes him the Hobgoblin, as well as another character we'll meet later named Grendel. And yes, that is the entire reason this movie is called Troll 3. Using the same costumes from 2, as well as Joe D'Amato also produced the second film. That's a bit like calling Ernest Scared Stupid Killer Clowns from Outer Space 2, because they reuse a few of the costumes. Ironically, that movie actually had a troll who's trying to make more trolls, and it involved milk, making it a better sequel than this. Then the running lady runs away, and her name is apparently Dejanira, which sounds like a very millennial name. But she gets tired from all that running, so she gets captured and imprisoned in fire. Ator Jr. and his mom, Son, get kicked out of the palace. She then heads to Hobgoblin troll Grendel's place, because apparently he's the only one who can reforge the mighty sword, along with his super cartoonish theme song. She's also going to need someone to raise Ator Jr., and Grendel accepts if he can have a piece of that son. Not Son's son, but her son. the woman named Sun. But instead she asks for a death potion because she can't stand not living with Ator Sr. But, you shouldn't really trust the Hobgoblin because instead he gives her a horny potion. Ew, 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 ew. No transition as we cut years later to Ator growing up to look just like his dad and nothing like how he used to. Must be bleaching his hair. He's also about to turn 17, played by an actor who is 28, and he looks 35. Well, hey, Grendel finally remade the sword. Ator tries slicing him in half for it, and it's a fake sword. Then this lady shows Ator a vision of Dejan, saying that he's the only one who can free her. He calls a cab with his legs to go back home, and Grendel lays out another sword. Daha, psych, it was another fake. He then splashes blinding potion in Ator's face and leaves to go get groceries or something. Well, now Ator is starting to look like Harry from Dumb and Dumber. He stumbles around Grendel's collection of dinosaurs until he accidentally splashes unblinding potion in his face. And the first time in, 10 years, he finally pushes a boulder out of the way and finds the real sword. And he decides to reforge it himself because I guess Grendel didn't actually need to be the one to do it. That poor woman. Grendel returns and he's not scared about this sword because I guess he just keeps dummy swords all over the place. And Ator is finally able to cut him in half. And a crow laughs at him. So, quest complete, he's got the mighty sword. But Ator still suits up and runs in a random direction to find a cave for more adventure. In this cave, he finds a two-headed dwarven robot, which he defeats by getting it to run against a wall after him, slipping under and cutting it in half, and it sparks up just in case he thought I was kidding that was a robot. Then Ator fights Godzilla. And look at all the loot, including a theme song. With that side quest complete, we go back to the main quest and fight a two-tailed mermaid. There's Dejan, she was prisoned next to fire, I guess. So Ator pulls a whole Sleeping Beauty on her, waking her up with a kiss. But oh no, stock footage, run for it! I guess she was into it. They then head to Maz Eisley's canteen, which just so happened to have Ator's mom hanging off of some abusive guy. So Ator beats him up. And watching is Grimilda, played by Indonesian-Dutch Laura Grimsler, who's the costume designer for the film, as well as working with D'Amato quite a lot for his Black Emmanuel series. With the love of a son breaking the spell on Sun, making her age and die. But then Ator and Dejan are jumped by Gorns wearing garbage bags, being this not jockster from Xena, who was actually at the bar, and Ator thinks he's really funny.
I wanted to repay you.
You don't seem the type to repay his debt.
I've never had a debt before. I'm a cheat, remember?
Then these guys run at them, with Dejan running with them, not struggling at all. And they're said to be from Hagen's gang. Hagen is this other Hobgoblin goblin troll, who I think is meant to be Thorn. I guess they just forgot his name. And he's got a friend covered in warts named Gunther, who kind of looks like William H. Macy. And he pets a ceramic cat, and given how terrible Italian movies are to animals, I'm glad it's ceramic. Oh, I guess Gunther is just a big fan of Bucket of Blood because he keeps people plastered.
Why were you so anxious for me to appear so proper? Huh? Why? Are you afraid Deianira won't love me?
It's only right. Deianira is no ordinary woman. It won't be easy to persuade her to give herself to you.
I'm pretty sure Gunther is more into him, given that he's petting him. And I love that Hagen just has such a normal voice.
It looks like meat's back on our menu, boys. No way. God, finally.
And Ator and friend walks into a trap. Actually, it wasn't, so they just grab Dejan and walk out. It was a misdirection as the real Dejan tries saving herself and fails. This is all because Gunther wants to marry Dejan, which she thinks is hilarious. And the fake Dejan was Grimilda, who reveals herself immediately and awkwardly runs away. Well, that was weird. So the two break into the palace again and rip off Star Wars. But now inside they rip off Raiders of the Lost Ark. Wait, Ator can just jump cut on an arm-mounted bow? But one of the guards still ends up stabbing what's-his-face. Gunther is slowly lowering Dijon into his molten plaster to make her a statue, but as Ator gets closer, he decides to immediately give up, grabbing his true love of Hagen and yeeting themselves into the plaster. So the day is saved. Or not, because Haagen-Dazs is still alive as the credits roll. So that's Trolls 3-1, Ator 3-2, Hobgoblins 2.1. Eric Kramer has a likable charm to him, which carries the role, though I feel like the previous Ator actor was better. Of course, the movie has shit all to do with Troll 1 or even 2, not even being in the same genre or time period. Looking at it as a soft reboot as Ator, and even as a standalone, it's a pretty average sword and sorcery movie. The beginning, the middle, and the ending of the film feel very disconnected, especially given that Hagen and Gunther weren't set up at the beginning of the film at all. Maybe they could have had it that Hagen was Grendel and Thorn from the beginning. Maybe keeping the sword away from Ator and saying he can get it if he proves himself, send him on quests and hope they die from it. It's not a great movie, but I've definitely seen worse sword and sorcery films. 4 out of 10. But let me know what you thought down below, as well as hitting the like button, subscribing if you're new. Hype on Mobile is very appreciated.